Welcome to episode 5 of the JMVO Weekly Primer, where we find some sort of good, positive nugget for you to chew on during the week to learn something or at least think on something while you go throughout your week to make your life better. Because I believe in marinating your mind in good stuff, and hopefully this podcast for you is good stuff. With me on the podcast this week is Mr. Hal Bowman.
Yes.
Met you about 10 years ago via Rich Redmond, who's our mutual friend and everyone's favorite almost comedian, drummer, actor, author, and speaker. He introduced us because of a video I did for him many, many, many years ago.
Wow.
And you and I have been pretty good friends ever since, I would say. I would venture to say that. But you, at one point, you had done a myriad of stuff over your time on this planet. Like me, you've sold cars, you've taught, you've done a whole bunch of different things, you've sold stuff. But lately, when I met you, you were doing Hal Bowman professional development.
Yes.
And that was the first time I'd met you. You were this guy that had the kind of a rocker look. You had long curly hair at the time, and
it was glorious.
You're a pretty good really good guitar player. Tell me more about what was the genesis for your start into motivation, and especially you went into the teacher part of it. How did that begin?
Yeah, I was teaching school for a long time, and sure, man, I had a lot of careers. I did the car business, and I was a stockbroker. I was a private investigator, and I started as a teacher, but I would leave and come back to teaching, and leave and come back to teaching because I don't know, man, I just loved it. And but the money part, as a teacher, trying to make ends meet with that kind of income was pretty challenging. And but I decided one day, I just have to do what I love. So I went back to teaching, and I taught for a long time, dude, a couple of decades. And in that time, there was a moment where I had a administrator working at our school, and she was a big fan of my class. And I had a couple of different kinds of classes. They're all kind of mentoring programs and leadership classes and things like that. Some personal growth stuff I was doing with kids. And she was a big fan, and she became a principal at another school. And she asked me one day, she said, will you come over and tell my teachers what you do and how you do it with your kids and how you get those kinds of results? And I was like, hell yeah, man. So I went over there, and which was hard. I took like a whole summer to come up with an hour's worth of stuff because I never really thought about, like, how do I do what I do? And, is there a strategy? Is that something that's replicable? And so I went, it took, months to figure this out. I went over and did a couple hours with her staff, and it was awesome, man. And teachers got a lot out of it, and there was kind of a buzz about it. And then another principal called and said, will you come talk to my teachers? And another principal called. And so the thing kind of started organically. I really wish there was some, I had this grand scheme designed the whole thing, but it wasn't like that at all.
Well, you just saw the nuances of what could be all around you, and even when I met you, the name of it wasn't what it is now, because at one time you pivoted, and Hal Bowman Professional Development became Teach Like A Rockstar. Then all of a sudden you hockey sticked. I remember that.
So here's the thing, man. I had this thing where it was called Legendary Teaching. So Hal Bowman Professional Development was the name of the company, and my program was called Legendary Teaching, and it really was all about how, as an educator, how do we have that legacy, that legendary impact on a kid's life? How do we use the content of our classroom to affect who this kid is so it lasts forever? And in my mind, like, legendary teaching was great. And but it was such a abstract title, and then there's a picture of me with all this hair, and a very confusing description, and nobody signed up, and it was just it was too much, man. And I did that a few times. I would try to host a workshop, and nobody would sign up. I tried to get some gigs, no one would hire me. And one day I had it was a school secretary at a neighboring school, and she said, what do you do? It seems like you always have something going on. So I told her about my program. She said, you need to talk to my husband, Dennis. So my friend Dennis Welch he came over to the double wide where I was teaching, little overcrowded there at the school, so I was teaching in a double wide. And, he spent the day and had all these kids coming in, and kids were eating at lunch, and kids that weren't even in my class were in my class. And he's like, man, you're like the rock star of teachers. And like this, I mean, we both were just looking at each other and like, there it is, teach like a rock star. And the craziest thing, man, is once we came up with that brand and that logo and it's kind of this biker look to the whole thing, the thing just exploded. Same information, same me, same everything, same marketing, except for the name and the logo and the brand, and it just exploded.
And you're still doing that today, doing the speeches and the talks around the country.
Still doing it, brother.
Yeah. What is the biggest thing that you're finding? I mean, why are teachers drawn to what you do over a lot of other professional development courses?
Man, here's what it is. I'm still stuck on this. I've been doing this for 10 years, and this is still a tricky question for me. And here's what I believe to be true. I'm deep down inside, every teacher really wants to be the most influential person in the lives of their kids. And if they're still in the classroom, that's still a part of who they are. That's still in their DNA. This job is way too hard for them not to deeply want that. It's still in there. And I think what Teaching a Rockstar allows a teacher to do is figure out how to use the content of their classroom, use the curriculum, the stuff they have to teach, and how to use that as the vehicle to teach what they really want to teach, which is all about, creating these passionate kids of character. And I think that, they ultimately, many teachers show up to the event and find exactly what they're looking for, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And dude, let me tell you this real quick. I was just talking about this yesterday. This is why this is such a tricky question. I was in Georgia, the state of Georgia, years ago, and Robin Miller is a huge fan of what I do, and a friend, and she probably has the record for seeing the most Teaching a Rockstar events. She's probably been to a dozen of them, and she brings people every time she comes. And I went to her school, at her school district, and and she hosted a party for me, like a reception the night before at her house. And she probably had a dozen, maybe 12, 15 teachers in her living room. We sat in a circle. And I told her, I want some real Georgia stuff. I want some apple cobbler and moonshine or whatever you people have, and possum. And so we had this little reception, and Robin asked each one of those teachers that had been to my workshop. She said, "Will you please take a moment and tell Hal what Teaching a Rockstar meant to you and what you walked away with?" And I'm telling you, dude, it was like 15 completely different stories, most of which I never even imagined people would get out of this thing. And so I kind of realized, what I'm trying to do is help a teacher kind of flip the switch, flip a light on, so they can see what's already in, most of it. Dude, it's that the greatness and the creativity and all the resourcefulness is already in that teacher. I'm just trying to present this stuff in such a way that they can find that within themselves.
And typically they come away with it. You have such a way with it because you have You're the One or Be the One campaign. Yeah. That you pretty much dominate that hashtag. If you guys search the Be the One hashtag on Twitter, you'll see all the appropriate or the relevant topics and posts that go along with that hashtag. And tell me a little bit more about that. What does that mean to be the one? Here's what years ago, I had a program where I would go to schools, secondary schools, junior high schools, and high schools, and really try to have an impact on school culture. And what I would do, I'd get on stage and would bring down half the school. They'd give me like freshmen and sophomore for an hour. Then later in the day, I'd work with juniors and seniors. And I do this big thing. And in fact, speaking of our mutual friend, this thing years ago was called Crash Course. Mm-hmm. And it stood for Courage, Relationships, Attitude, Strength, and Honor. And I was done with it. I really didn't see an impact, but I did like the acronym. So that's when I worked with Rich and let him take it over. Now he does his Crash thing. Mm-hmm. And so my idea was, how can I impact school culture? And I had to be honest with myself in that when I'm at a school, at the end of our day together, after giving a couple of assemblies to the student body, is the school really different as a result? And, I don't know, man. I don't know if we could say if the school is a different
place, and we were able to shift culture in a sustainable, permanent way. So with that question, I kind of stepped aside from that program for, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years. And then I came up with an idea, like, what if I work with the most influential people on school campus? What if I take those personalities that really drive culture and spend time with them? I'm talking about the most influential teachers, most influential kids, administrators. And so Be the One is all about helping a school shift culture in such a way that we have permanent, profound, lasting results. And it's been awesome, dude. Like, it's one of those things where, like, I kind of knew it was going to be really good, but I had no idea just like how significant of a shift can occur in a single day when I work with the most influential people in a school.
And it sounds like it's a lot of fundamental human relationship type stuff.
All relationship stuff.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what I think that someone had mentioned, that if you're able to go to college, don't look at it for the paper you get at the end. Look at it for the relationships you can make and the networking that's involved, and learning how to be that kind of a person. Because what I would imagine teachers, and what we hear a lot about, are the underfunding of schools and more responsibilities being put on the teacher's shoulders. So you kind of come in there and turn that upside down and help them to remember their why in a way.
Dude, I can't even tell you, truthfully, the fundamental pillars of what I do is helping teachers and students and administrators and school leaders identify, first of all, what they really want for their kid. Like as a result of them spending their lives with you, as a teacher, what is it what's the ultimate lesson? Like 30 years from now at the high school reunion, when these kids are sitting around the table talking about you, what do you want that conversation to be? Because they're going to forget all about the content, man. They have, they don't even need it. They have Google on the phone. They have access to all the information. Mm-hmm. So what's the real lesson that you want this kid to have forever? And once they can articulate that, and then we can then dive deep into why they want it, that's when we see some real results. And, oftentimes at professional development events, we'll have educators focusing on, teaching strategies and things like that, which is great if first they have in place, the ability to clearly articulate what they want for the kids and why they're there. Without that, all that other professional development stuff really doesn't matter.
Well, with a lot of what you do, can that be extended into corporate culture in the workplace in general?
Yeah, man. I think I just happen to have a passion for teachers and those people who have accepted the honor and responsibility of standing before kids. But clearly, man, this stuff is so important, not just in a classroom, but in families, in the house, in church, in corporate culture, everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And at one point, I know most of it in the beginning when you and I did a lot of work together, you were getting in front of teachers. At one point, did you start presenting in front of the kids? And how do you go about influencing those influential kids?
I think the first step is just like what I do with the teachers. With the kids, it's all about immediately creating that rapport and, making sure they understand that you're there for them and you're there to help. And kids, when you get the kids, the most influential kids in the school, and let them know they've been identified, we went through 2,500 names and we highlighted the most influential personalities, the alpha, and that's who sits right here. That alone, man, there's such a shift in that room. And also, when kids look around and see the diversity in that room, a lot of these kids don't really know each other, but what they have in common is for whatever reason, they were born with that certain stuff, man, that certain magical ingredient that makes them these natural leaders. Mm-hmm. Spending that time, and the time I spent with them, it's a combination of interactive, what looks to be like games and things like that. But really, what we're doing is getting a kid comfortable and vulnerable, so we can talk about the heavy stuff and make sure that the initiatives we do on campus are going to sustain themselves.
So with a lot of what you're doing with the influential kids, do you see what you and I grew up with the cliques in high school and things of that nature. Do you see those things typically break down after you've spoken and open their eyes and say, you know what, it's okay to find the commonality between all of your differing groups? And they're going to be differing groups. We're all human that way.
Yeah.
And we're all going to gravitate towards, gravitate towards like. Do you find ways to bridge those gaps to really make it more palatable so there's less bullying and a little bit more encouragement from these influential kids? All of a sudden they're talking to the people like me in high school that was the mullet wearing burnout with the overcoat that listened to heavy metal and all that stuff.
I was in your group, brother. Yeah, man. It was, that's true. I mean, first we acknowledge the differences because, honestly, like when I was in school, I had no interest in sitting at the Dungeons and Dragons table at lunch, and there were athletes were over there, and I was in Texas, and they had, your country kid table with cowboy hats and tablecloth shirts and all that stuff. And but then, what we make this shift from this idea of accepting each other and accepting differences, and we take that to the next level. And that is, we want to celebrate the differences. Like, we want to find what makes people unique, and not just me. I'm not interested in anybody accepting that shit. I want them to celebrate it. And then we do different things throughout the, there's different initiatives that we do with these kids. One of the first things we always do is called Best Week Ever. And what we'll do is we'll take these kids, these most influential kids in school, let's say I have 100 of them, we'll pick a couple people in school to make it the best week ever. They usually don't know these people. We'll usually pick one teacher, one kid, and I'll break these leaders up into 5 groups: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I say Monday, all right, you're going to make it the best Monday of this person's life. And they have to come up with a plan where they're not spending money, but they're going to do something to make Monday absolutely amazing. And Tuesday, you better bring it because Monday's setting the bar. Wednesday, I want it better than Tuesday. Friday, you're the big finale. And what these kids come together and they come up with these amazing ideas to make it the best week of these people's lives. People they don't even know. We just pick some anonymous kid, an anonymous faculty member at school. And for some reason, when you give to somebody and expect nothing in return, and you do it together with these people you haven't been friends with until now, man, that creates, that breaks down so many barriers and walls between people. It's a phenomenal experience.
So basically, it's a group of people that, I guess, conspire, if you will, to basically make somebody's day that much better. Exactly. So, the cliche best-looking girl all of a sudden is giving attention to one of the kids. Is there any backlash in terms of him going, "Oh, she's got a crush on me"?
Here's the interesting thing, man. What I tell these kids, I say, listen, this is going to be anonymous. We're going to do this ninja style.
I got you.
No one's ever going to know it was us. And I sell it. I'll tell them, listen, man, if someday they find out it was this group that did this, you know what? They're going to remember for a long time. But if they never know who it was, they'll remember this experience forever. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. It doesn't matter to me. The reason I tell them that is because I really want these kids to experience what it feels like to give to someone and invest in someone and make someone's life better without expecting anything in return. Once they feel that, man, it's almost an addiction. Like they want it again, and they can't wait to do it again. Can we do this again next week? Yeah, we can do it again next week.
Is that something that, how would that better corporate work cultures, do you think, carrying that forward?
In the corporate world?
Yeah.
Dude, here's what's the craziest stuff, man, is like it works everywhere. And what's the most fascinating part about this, there's this like inverted bell curve of interest. Like in the early grades, in pre-K and K and first grade, stuff like this, kids are super interested. We get to middle school, they're too cool for school. But what's interesting, as we get through high school, these types of things, they're just as interested in show and tell their kindergarten year as they are their senior year. Mm-hmm. It's fascinating. As kids get older and mature a little bit, they go back and what was in all these ideas become acceptable again. I'm telling you, in the world of an adult, doing these types of things, these types of initiatives where we're giving to other people, that's where families are built. Mm-hmm. And we always talk about, those cultures where people want to stay and aren't looking for other jobs. And these are the things that gives meaning to their profession.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm going to brag on my daughter here real quick. She came to me one night and she said, there's a girl that I sit with on the bus who she's mildly autistic and she doesn't exactly have the best breath, but I sit with her and I really don't want to do that anymore. I want to sit with my friends and be with them and play and yada yada. And I said, I understand. I said, I'm going to commend you first and foremost for having the fortitude to do what you're doing. That's called having empathy for somebody. I mean, that's the empathy. The lack of empathy is probably what's gotten us into a lot of trouble lately. Yeah. And I said, I'm very proud of you for that. I said, you need to ask yourself this question. I said, and this is something for you to answer. I said, I don't want you to think you're doing this for me or anybody else, but you have to ask yourself, is your sitting with her the best part of her day? And if it is, you have to contend with that. And you have to make up your mind for yourself whether you're going to continue doing that and being possibly what is a very big highlight of her day. As annoying as she may be or how she is, you are probably providing her with something to look forward to. And I said, I'm not trying to put any guilt on you or anything like that, but that's probably what's happening. I said, if the halitosis is something of an issue, then offer a stick of gum and sit down and be
right. Yeah.
It's 10, 15 minutes out of your day.
Right.
That could be making a humongous difference in her life. And she was like, okay.
Right. It's so true, man.
Yeah. But I mean, even, a friend of mine in Vegas, when I worked there, he says, sometimes it's as simple as going around and saying hello to people. Acknowledgement. That can brighten somebody else's day. Saying their name.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Dude, that's huge, especially for kids, man.
Oh my gosh!
With this, I was out of school recently, and I was working with some of their student leaders at the high school. And recently I was watching Gary V, and when I saw one of his videos, he was talking about your 5 closest people you have relationships with, the 5 people you interact with the most. And what he was saying, is you have to look at that and look at those people. Are they adding to your life, and are those productive relationships? And you need to find the one that isn't and cut that one out, which I think might be fascinating for adults. That's one way to look at it. But I was telling these kids, man, you guys are the most influential people in the school. You don't have the liberty of cutting someone out. What you need to do is focus on that 5th person, the person that's the lowest on your list. You need to focus on that person and be even more influential. You can't cut them out, because it's you. Like, you're the one in that person's life that they absolutely need. So we're not going to cut them out. We're going to give them more and focus more on that. Mm-hmm. And I think when kids understand that, it's it's a life changer for everybody. It's a life changer for the leader, life changer for this kid that they're going to focus more on, and also that's what shifts culture in the school.
Is getting them to embrace that empathy. I'm trying. There's another word for it too.
You know what, man? It's compassion. It's empathy.
Compassion.
Also, that kid taking the responsibility to be the most influential person in this other student's life.
Mm-hmm. For most people listening to this, what do you think are 3 takeaways that you speak about? I remember you talking about an example, and it was a beautiful example. I mean, you're a master storyteller. Especially when you have the experience of living out those stories. And one of the things that you used to do and what you used to talk about was greeting each and every student by name as they walk into the classroom.
Yeah. I every year I go to, there's a university here in Texas I go to, and when these kids do their student teaching, they come back to turn in some portfolio that's essentially meaningless, but they have to turn this thing in. And I don't tell that part. And they always ask me, what's the most important thing I need to do? And for every kid and for every seasoned veteran teacher, it's always the same thing. Man, the whole educational process starts when you make eye contact with that kid. And it's every kid coming and going into the classroom. It's some sort of physical connection, whether it's a high five, a fist bump, hug, like whatever your style is, doesn't matter, slap on the back, hand on the shoulder, and eye contact, and also, you know, some sort of a greeting with that kid's name. Jim, brother, man, I'm so glad you're here today. Come on. Hey, man, sit in the front row, dude. I can't wait. You know, hey, welcome home. Get in here. That whole thing. Man, I was thinking about you on the way to school today. Come on in, man. You know, those types of things where that connection starts right there at the door. And, you know, when teachers have these, you know, these crazy behavior problems and classroom management issues, I always, that's the first question. Are you greeting each and every kid with a physical, emotional, eye contact, handshake, saying their name at the door every day as they come and go?
I would imagine, like anything else, a teacher gets, you know, 10, 15, 20 years into their time of teaching, it gets old, it gets commonplace. There's a bit of cynicism that creeps in. Have you had these older dog teachers at your events, and have you opened their eyes?
Well, here's the thing, man. Yes, cynicism and just burnout does creep in for an aging, you know, 20, 30-year veteran if they're stuck in the grind of teaching. Mm-hmm. If they're in touch with what they're really trying to communicate, why they're there, and they're focused mainly on the fundamental, the foundation of teaching, which is the relationship with those kids, they're not going to burn out. You don't burn out on relationships with people. When you love your kids deeply and you're focused on what you really want them to gain and why you're there, burnout does not occur. Burnout only happens as a result when you're just grinding out the content, trying to stick some information, some content into some kid's noggin. Now at the thing, like at a gig, when I'm speaking, man, I'm telling you, like I've done thousands of these things, so I can tell you that when I look at the crowd, I can always spot there's like three types of audience members. One is the person I'm affirming, like they're already on this page, and I'm refueling them, and it feels fantastic. There's another group where this is who they used to be, or maybe they always wanted to be, but never could figure out how to be this teacher. And now I've given them the answer, and they have the key, and it feels fantastic. But there's this third group that lean back in the chair. You know, they got the arms crossed. You know, suspiciously staring at. And
what are you going to tell me about teaching?
Right. That's what I thought it was for years. But what I realized after I started figuring out who I was getting emails from and messages and thank you notes, and that what the look really isn't suspicion. It's really the thought of, oh my gosh, I've hurt some kids, and I've said some things I shouldn't have said. And because to accept what I talk about, they have to own what they've done in the past, and how they taught in the past, and how they've given up on certain kids. And that's a painful thing. And what it is, man, it's a more of a look of, not shame, but wow, I've got some apologies to make.
Yeah. They're kind of reconciling their sins, so to speak, in a way. And
in a way, yeah.
Yeah. What are some takeaways for people, you know, anybody going on with their lives? And I'm going to frame this podcast definitely for teachers, of course. Want to help you out and get you more exposure. I think by now you should have been nationwide, but I think, you know, it's never too late to get that ball rolling. And I think that, you know, what you're doing now and what we always talked about in the past with social media and, creating, I think the next thing for you is creating that Facebook community that brings teachers together. And because they've been a part of your Teach Like a Rockstar experience, they get, kind of part of the Facebook community where they all start helping each other. I think that's a great strategy for you. Something to look into, because you're essentially building a community of teachers who want to be like-minded. I mean, I think you're right. They all start out, they want to have that affectation to be influential on their kids' lives. Over time, something happens, it's burnout or whatever, and all the different elements that they can't control, budgeting issues, these horrifying events that have happened in the past couple of years, those are all out of their control. All they can do is show up and do the best that they can. So takeaways that they can.
Let me say something up there.
Sure.
It's funny that you say like over time, they some of them, but I got to tell you, man, for lots of them, it's within the first 5 minutes of teaching.
Hmm.
Because what we have here, this is one of the only professions on the planet where the same results are expected of a first day teacher as a 35-year veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Without any kind of, there's nobody else in the classroom. There's no partner. There's no one to ask right now, and they're stuck with 37 kids in a classroom. From crazy high IQs to really low. We have kids that can't speak English, some emotional problems. We've got you name it. We've got criminals. We got whatever there is. It's one of those in the classroom. And here's some 22-year-old kid that just got out of school. They don't even have their own kids, and oftentimes they get lost within the first 5 minutes.
Wow. What are they missing in their lead up to student teaching in the college level then?
Well, first of all, I've always said they should have student teaching as the first semester rather than the last. That way you can tell if you really like this thing, Because once you student teach, you think, oh my gosh, I've made a grave mistake with my career choice. It's too late. You're about to get a job. And the last thing we want is a bunch of teachers that don't really want to be there. And so, I'm serious. They should have something where you go into a classroom the first few weeks of your freshman year of college, you can see what this thing is really about. And then, and student teaching is really, it's all about who that new teacher happens to get, who that college student happens to get as a mentor teacher, as a supervising teacher. And, sometimes I just give it to the oldest person on campus rather than the most effective person. And really some very few school districts have it, but there really needs to be a multiple year mentoring program with really compassionate, effective educators mentoring these younger teachers.
And someone to be coaching them, like a rock star.
Yeah.
What are some takeaways, things for people to be thinking about, 3, 4, 5 different things as they listen to this? What are some takeaways they can move forward with? Like even for teachers, how do they keep themselves reminding themselves of what they're really doing?
I'd say here's a few of them just because they're fresh on my mind. I got dozens, but the ones that are freshest on my mind because of what we talked about is really taking a moment to come up with, to articulate what you really want for your kids. Mm-hmm. That's not something that's going to happen within 30 seconds. Really think about that over a course of days and let that marinate in your mind. And then once you have it, to really accept the challenge of telling your kids, this is what I really want for you, and letting them know over and over. It's something that we have to talk about every day, whatever that is, and also really being able to identify why you're there. Why do you do this job? Why teach? Why this school? Why these kids? Why this class? And then again, tell your kids. For most teachers, it always comes down to the fact that you love them, and to be secure and confident enough to say those words to that kid, man. Dude, I love all of my kids. I love all of my students forever. And you happen to be one of mine. Let's get to work. Is
that something you feel about your quote unquote kids being the teachers that you teach and coach?
Yeah, I'm here to have an exponential impact, man. And at the end of everything, whether it's a keynote or a full day workshop, I tell them straight up, man, I love you guys so much. I desperately thank them for the work that they do. And so tell your kids what you do, what you want for them, why you do this, greeting kids coming and going, saying that each kid every day, and then also just loving those kids relentlessly, and remembering that they're kids and they're going to make mistakes, that they're supposed to screw up. That's why you have a job. And it's not that we expect them to make mistakes, but they're kids. It's going to happen. But then the next day we give them another opportunity to be amazing and another opportunity to be great, and let them mess that up and give them another opportunity to be awesome relentlessly.
So, and there was a question I just had in my head. Of course, I can't think of it. Okay. Going back, I asked a little bit about college as far as what they're missing out. But in this day and age, and, we talked about Vaynerchuk earlier. He talks about when he went to school, he was a DNF student, but he always knew exactly what his thing was. He was very self-aware from a very early age, knowing that he was an entrepreneur, businessman. But back then, it wasn't very popular to identify as such. It meant that you lived in your parents' basement and things of that nature. But he says, if I had the teacher, and one of the he talks about all the time is that if you're a teacher of kids and you are able to get in front of them every day, and you know that one kid just isn't cut out for college, it's just not going to be his thing. Even though he gets those C's and D's and F's, to give him the wink and let him know, dude, it doesn't mean this defines you. It doesn't mean that you're a loser.
Yeah.
You will find your thing. But you got to try harder. Absolutely. You got to apply yourself, because sometimes doing uncomfortable things makes us grow. But I'm winking at you right now saying, I see you.
That's a huge part of it. And, for me, what I really hope teachers understand that, look, I want teachers to be passionate about their content. Like, I really want a geography teacher to be passionate about geography. At the same time, I want that teacher to be equally passionate about helping that kid find their passion, which probably is not geography. But at the same time, I want that teacher to model what it looks like to be passionate about your thing. I'm not sure there's a more, enjoyable thing to watch than somebody do whatever their passion is. I love that. That's exciting. I want kids to see an example of a teacher living their passion in front of them, not so they think, man, I want to be a geography professor when I grow up. More that I want to do my profession and feel like the way she does about her profession, whatever that is. And yeah, right, dude. I like that. I'm not like I'm all about kids going to college if that is what's right for them. All too often we are pushing kids into college and racking up hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt when the kid never even pursues a career that would require that degree in the first place.
Yeah. And I think that more and more we start developing in the world, and we've got, the entirety of the world's information at our fingertips.
And here's the thing, dude. The debt for me is like the second worst thing. Like the first worst thing is thinking about my student 5 years now is going to be stuck in some cubicle and hating their life.
Yeah.
That's the part that bothers me. I hate the debt too. But what really is thinking about this kid getting stuck in that, that American dream cycle of getting a job that you hate.
But that's a new version of the American dream, the whole notion of retirement and all that stuff. It's only a 40, 45, 50-year-old idea. Yeah. But that's a whole other topic. Definitely teaching the self-awareness quotient, which is a huge variable. You start bringing that into the equation, and for a teacher, for at least when I went to school, if a teacher brought up and said, you know what, maybe college isn't for you right now, would have been okay to say, but it was so thrust upon us that if you didn't go, you were just relegated to being a loser. There's until you get that piece of paper that says you spent 4 years doing something, that was it. Which isn't true. And I think that needs those other options, blue collar trades, carpentry, being an electrician, plumber, all that stuff, even sales and entrepreneurial talent, identifying those traits, understanding that your 20s are for falling on your face and eating rice and beans, and you don't have to be a millionaire in that time frame. If you can, great. But sometimes people just need to find out who they are. And that was certainly true for me.
Yeah.
That was my story. My mother wanted me to go to college and spend 2 years there. It wasn't me. Now, when I had to go back and pay for it myself, boy, the things changed. I really did much better. But I was also, 4 or 5 years more mature. I did radio, which is not traditionally a very low paying job, but I chose to do that. And I understood that going in. But I also found other ways to make up for it with other side hustles, voiceover, video production, things like that.
Yeah.
I found a way. And then to implore that to somebody, look, you will find a way. Be understanding of the situation you're in. And these kids, they're savvy enough to know that they've got the world is their oyster. Pretty much, I would think. I could be wrong.
Well, here's the thing, man. It's such a different reality. These kids, when I was in school, I was graduating in the mid-'80s from high school. there was really no examples of people that were making money outside of those people that went to college. Those are the examples I had, outside of athletes or whatever, rock star. But these kids, every kid has dozens, if not hundreds of examples of people their own age making crazy money doing stuff they love. Whether it's these crazy YouTubers or kids that play video games on Stitch and all that other stuff that it's unbelievable what kids are doing. And so what we're trying to sell them in the counselor's office about, you have to go to college. The kid's like, are you crazy? You're nuts.
You're the one that's out of touch here.
Yeah. Now, I do think it's an awesome experience, and of course I would want my kids to go because it was a great experience for me. But is it an absolute necessity? I mean, come on. I mean, let's at least be honest. And like that's why I love those high schools I see with those the CTE programs and those all the trade stuff. Man, the kids are coming out of at a high school with licenses and certifications in welding and auto mechanics, and they're certified. And they're getting jobs, making great money.
Well, I think what I would, if I were in their position, look, it's not incumbent or a requirement for you to go to college, but it is a requirement, and it is incumbent, and you are personally responsible for continually educating yourself in some manner throughout the rest of your life. I mean, I was out of radio for 5 years. I think I've listened to maybe 5 hours of radio in that time. I constantly listen to podcasts and books and anything that's recommended, because there's constant flows of knowledge out there. Just immerse yourself, and this is the whole point of this podcast. Immerse yourself in good stuff.
Sure.
Turn off the news, turn off the sports. All that's sports is good stuff for some people. It's an escape, but feed your mind with good stuff. I think that's a tremendous tenet that could be implored upon to kids these days. In addition to what you talk about with being the one and stuff like that. But with that being said, Mr. Hal Bowman, great friend of mine for so many years, how can we help you with Teach Like a Rockstar?
Hey man, listen, I one of the thing that I do when I go to schools and I work with teachers and work with kids, it is, outside of my family, it's the most important part of my life. And anybody that would think that this would be something good for their school, their teachers, their students, to contact me, and we'll set something up.
Right on. And how do they do that? It's teachlikearockstar.com.
HalBowman.com. Yeah, teachlikearockstar.com goes there too, but HalBowman.com, HalBowman.com, and they can find me in social media at Hal Bowman on all the platforms. When
can we find the Teach Like a Rockstar book? When is that coming to light? I'm going to make you commit right here and set a deadline.
I don't know. It's all right there. I've got it. Don't you worry. It's in there.
I can connect you with the people to just speak it out, and they will write it for you. You need the book, man.
Let's do that. Who's that?
His name is Paul Deepan. He's actually helping Rich write his book.
Where's Paul?
Paul is here in Nashville.
Oh, cool.
If we're able to, I can connect you guys. But definitely a book. Go to halbowman.com. Where can they follow you and get all those great memes on Instagram? Is it at Hal Bowman?
Facebook, it's Hal Bowman. Twitter, it's Hal Bowman. Instagram, it's Hal Bowman.
Okay. All Hal Bowman. Very easy to spell. And I'll put a link your handle will be over there on your side of the screen. So with that being said, thank you so much, Mr. Hal Bowman, for being my guest this week for JMVO Weekly Primer, Episode 5. And if anybody has any questions for Hal, I've got all the connection information down below, his website and everything. Please feel free to reach out. It's a tremendous presentation. And you should certainly look into having Hal at your school or even workplace. You could do this in the workplace, right?
It's been done. It's been
absolutely
awesome.
Okay, look for him there, and we'll be talking to you next week.